Alright YouTube, how you guys doing? It's been roughly about 24 hours since the WWDC announcement. I thought I would properly kind of sit down, watch the video over again because there was no live coverage by Apple until after the event. So I read kind of a few live blogs and a few hidden live streams, but it just wasn't that experience that you get out of a live video stream or a post, you know, proper Apple video stream. And I've had kind of had a lot of time to reflect on it, and this video is not going to be about what happened at the event, because surely if you're watching this video you already know what happened at the event. But if you haven't seen the WWDC announcement, I'll leave a link in the description should you wish to check it for yourself, see what features were announced. But in this video specifically, I'm going to kind of say the good things and the bad things, kind of critique the event, what I liked, what I didn't like most importantly, and give you a rundown, and hopefully you guys can agree, disagree, leave your comments, leave your thoughts. Video responses are welcome, they're open should you wish to put it in, but please do keep it specific to this event. So WWDC pretty much kicked off with Line, and here's the thing, here's the first problem that I had with Line generally, right? So we had a Back to Mac event in October 2010, which, you know, Line was announced and MacBook Airs were refreshed at that event. But having WWDC went by yesterday, I'm thinking there was no need for an event, a Back to Mac event in October. They could have just done a MacBook Air silent update like they've been doing with all the Macs previously, where they go over, you know, a tiny bump, or not a tiny bump, but just generally a refresh. There's no need for a keynote. You know, the iMacs, the 27-inch and the 21.5-inch, also in late 2009. That was a radical, you know, it was a big step, you know, changing it from, I think it was a 24-inch iMac, and the Magic Mouse was also introduced in late 2009 without a keynote. So why did we have to have a keynote for the MacBook Air event back in 2010? Now those of you saying, hang on, you know, it's the Mac, there should be a keynote for it. But yesterday at WWDC, I didn't see anything new from Line. It was the same recap they'd done from the Back to Mac event in October. You know, my kind of thought was, okay, they're giving us a teaser at the Back to Mac event, and we're going to see a loads more features at WWDC. That never happened. We essentially seen the same things that we've seen at the Back to Mac event. You know, everything that they've announced for Line is great. I would be willing to pay, or I, you know, pay double the amount that what they are charging. They're charging £20.99 here in the UK, which is fantastic. It's great. I love every single feature, but I just thought they could have done that a bit better. I mean, there was no need. Had I have not seen, you know, the things that happened at the Back to Mac event, and, you know, WWDC would have been a huge surprise with all these new features of Line, Apple's next operating system. So what kind of got me into the mindset was, okay, they're giving us a teaser at the Back to Mac event, and we're going to see, you know, more features, you know, better things at WWDC, because that is where all the developers kind of gather around and so on. I think the problem was they were kind of short on time, and they thought, okay, we'd kind of stick the same thing again and, you know, give more demos of the same features which we gave in the Back to Mac event. So starting off with the features, there were 10 main features, and I think I agree with all of them. They're all fantastic. Refreshed, Mail looks great. I love how the conversation thing comes up. More of a clean UI. We haven't seen much of a refresh for the past few years on the Mail application, so anything is kind of welcome. Secondly, AirDrop. Amazing service. So I kind of switch between the MacBook Air, which I've got here, and the iMac, and I always need to kind of go into the network folder, and sometimes the MacBook Air doesn't show into my network settings. So hopefully AirDrop is basically a service which you can drag and drop files, share them between Macs. It's all secure, all easy, and the icon is amazing as well for the AirDrop. And generally all the icons for the new features look fantastic. I think it's probably just because they've not changed it in a while, and now that this refresh is happening for Line, did this generally look pretty solid. Next up is the Mac App Store. I have no idea why they thought it would be a good idea to waste some time on the Mac App Store. It's been with us since January. We know how it works, but I guess, again, yeah, the Mac App Store is great, don't get me wrong, it's fantastic, love it, use it every single day, like to see. The reason why I love the Mac App Store is because it kind of gives me I like the review system, and I like how all the applications are under one roof, so you don't have to go about searching on websites, endless websites. So the Mac App Store hasn't made it easy, but did it, you know, warrant a dedicated time on the WWDC keynote? I think not. Next up is the gestures. amazing, a huge fan of the gestures, even on the MacBook Air right here, or what I use for the iMac, the Magic Mouse. You know, fantastic how you can just switch between things, a bit more usable, I guess, and especially for those of you who have forked out for a Magic Trackpad for your iMac or your MacBook or whatever it is. Huge fan of the gestures in general, so any new additions, new styles are welcomed. Mission control, fantastic, or fan-dabby-dozy. Now, for one of the things that kind of got me interested in the Mac side was the software, and specifically Spaces and Expose were just, you know, I have to get a Mac. It was just that good. I know you can do the same thing on Windows, but you have to search around for different kind of third-party software. It could be buggy, you have to pay for it and so on. Because it was all built into the Mac platform, it was a no-brainer deal, and that kind of got me sold. The Mission Control kind of takes it to the next level. It kind of gives you a bird's eye view of anything. I haven't personally used it, but from the demos they showed, phenomenal, and I look forward to seeing just that one feature in line itself. The next two things were autosave and versions. Great. I wish I had this feature back in the good old uni days, because, you know, you're going through a number of reports, presentation, documents, and it would be kind of good to see if I wanted to go back to a specific version of a document. Works a bit like time machine. You can see over our past few days, past few weeks or months how that document has progressed. Great. Autosave, you don't have to constantly save your work, as the name suggests. You're not having to constantly trying to remind yourself Command S or File Save As. It's automatically doing that. And needless to say, if you run out of power of your Mac or whatever, or someone, you know, takes out the power cord, or there's some sort of failure, electricity failure, then you know everything is going to be saved. And that's one of the problems with students that I found. You know, they were losing files, they forgot to save. And this, I think, is just going to be an amazing feature if you're in the education side or even the business side. And I think that's pretty much all for Line. There might be one or two more things, but I think I've covered the main features of Line. It's going to be priced at £20.99, available next month exclusively on the Mac App Store. And that has got some people kind of thinking, is that a good idea or not? I think it is. I think it's a good idea, and I say that because if they were to put it into retail stores, trust me, that price would be more. They're able to provide this price simply because of the distribution. They don't have to send out couriers, the logistics. They don't have to, you know, produce marketing boxes, retail store shelves. They don't have to dedicate space to that. And I think minus all that has resulted us to get this cool price of 20 quid. I believe they had to keep the same price as Snow Leopard when that was introduced. That was quite low. People were surprised as to how low it was. And if they jumped, you know, to double that price, people would moan, it would be in the media and so on. So I think it was good PR and a good decision by Apple and all. In terms of the specification that your Mac needs to be for Line ready, I guess, you have to have a Mac that was purchased after December 2007, and it has to have an Intel Core 2 Duo. Apple didn't really mention the specs on stage, but a few people who have tested the latest build of the Developer Preview 4, they've suggested you need that kind of system to make sure Line works smoothly. So next, coming up to iOS 5, superb features that are being added. Now put it this way, if you were notified 5 months previous to WWDC and said these are going to be the features in iOS 5, and then come WWDC, you would see kind of a repeat of what they already introduced 5 months ago, and adding insult to injury, saying this is going to be launched in fall, which is about Septemberish time. So that is kind of what happened with Line. But enough of the Line rant, let's move on to iOS 5. There's about 10 features, and they're all kind of, you know, quite fit very nicely into the whole kind of Android versus Apple game, and in specific they've introduced iMessage, but kind of takes a punch at a rim and basically allows you to communicate between your iPod Touch, your iPad and your iPhone. Free SMS essentially, and you can share pictures. It's also kind of a, you know, a kick to the for carriers such as O2 and Orange, because if it's free, so the carriers will probably need to find some other way to rake money off us. But I believe iCloud, which is, I'll talk about that in a minute, they'll probably make money off that instead. The second feature that was added, and probably one of my favourites, is Newsstand. Why, oh why did we not get this at the same time iBook was launched? this is great. I don't happen to read many books. I read a lot of papers, like, you know, newspapers, the Daily Record, the Sun, the Metro, and you know, I like the whole idea of reading newspapers. I'm a newspaper guy, and what are you? You know, what do you read more, books or newspapers? But finally, Newsstand is here, and as the name suggests, it's similar to iBooks. You've got big publications in terms of newspapers on it, and I love it. And this should have been with us previously, but hey, it's here now. The third thing, and this probably should have been at number 1, notifications is here. And a lot of people who are moaning about Android and so on. I've never used an Android phone, so I don't know how the notification works in that, but apparently it is great. And apparently Apple have stolen some of these features from the Android side as to how they work. And again, you've got the swiping up and down on the screen, so all the notifications come up on that screen. And generally when they were demoing it, huge fan of it, looks nice, makes it easier. So the next feature that was introduced to iOS 5, again, this is brilliant, reminders, and as the name suggests, it's to kind of give you reminders as to what you need to do, or if you're like me, you're going grocery shopping or whatever. I use currently the default app on the iPhone, which is Notes, I believe, and I'll write the whole list of things that I need to get from Walmart or Asda or Tesco or whatever. So I would go through that. I was going to purchase an app called Things not too long ago for about £6 or so, and I'm glad I didn't, because this reminders feature by Apple looks pretty neat. So it's kind of a shame for the developers who are building or have built apps such as reminders and are charging for it, and are going to have to find some kind of unique feature to lure people in and pay that £6. I'm pretty sure that Things does have a few more added features than reminders, but it's going to make people think twice. You know, free app, you know, stock app on the iPhone versus £6 for essentially the same thing, but for, you know, a few more features. And the thing that was good about Things was the UI. But looking at the reminders app, the UI on that looks great as well. So Things has probably got to either reduce the price or make it free. So moving on to the next feature, which is the camera, and they've not upgraded the megapixels or anything. They've made the software a bit more easier. I'm a huge fan of this as well. A lot changes in iOS 5, and as I said, you know, iOS 5 is a winner, and that's probably because we've not seen it before until WWDC, which was yesterday. So the camera, in a sense, if you've got your phone locked, my iPhone by default goes onto lock mode after 2 minutes of non-usage. And you know, if I was to quickly take my phone out and want to take a picture, I'd have to unlock it and then open the camera up and then you know, take the picture. But now, if your phone goes onto lock mode, there's a shortcut on the actual lock screen to take, you know, quickly go into and take a snap, and you know, that's pretty interesting. They've also made the volume buttons on the iPhone itself to take photos, which, needless to say, is pretty damn awesome. I believe some of these features were available in the jailbreaking or jailbroken community, and they have stolen some ideas. Apple has even hired one of the main or the major jailbroken guys, so maybe he's given some hints or some ideas or implemented that into this new iOS 5. So generally anything that makes easier for us to take pictures, easier for, you know, that snapshot that you want to take at that moment, you know, iPhone is going to make it easier. The next feature onto iOS 5 was Safari, upgrades to that. So you've got, similar to what Instapaper is, read later, kind of a UI changed here and there, bookmarks, and generally making it a bit more easier. I don't have a problem with the current Safari. I think it's fine. I don't use Instapaper. I don't kind of save pages, so it's not going to be really useful to me per se. But if they're going to make it more improved, a refreshed version. Is this feature that important to me? No, but are updates welcome to it? For sure. Next up is Twitter integration right into iOS 5. Twitter versus Facebook, personally I think Twitter comes out on top of me. It's something that I use a lot over Facebook. So this kind of means more to me than for some of you guys. I know some of you guys might be interested more in Facebook. But built-in Twitter integration is pretty cool, simply because now you've got a send tweet, or you know, when you go into your photos or photo album, you can tweet directly into there rather than opening up Twitter, you know, locating the file and then tweeting it out. Now you can do it right within the album itself. Not only that, but you can also, you know, tweet out articles that you've read from the Safari software, from your iPhone, iPad or iPod Touch, whatever it may be. Same with YouTube. You can share videos or share links from YouTube, tweet them out to your kind of contacts on Twitter. So yeah, I'm generally happy with the Twitter integration. You know, what do you guys feel? Do you like it? Were you expecting a little more? Would you prefer they'd rather kind of focus more on Facebook? Next up, once again, you've got Mail revised, similar to what they've done in Line, you know, much more cleaner. You can flag messages finally. When you're reading emails, you can have the keyboard split up, which is pretty cool, and I believe I've seen a few people tweet out that they've copied this from WebOS, which is quite cool, perhaps. Also now you can have formatting in Mail. Basically you can make it bold, italics, underline, indent. You know, it's kind of going into the right direction for iOS, no doubt, but yeah, it's just kind of where we finally got it. And then moving on to the next feature, and this should have really been at the top as well, PC free. And just kind of stepping back from this feature for a moment, the underlying theme of WWDC this year was, you know, post-PC era essentially, and you know, the idea was people are moving away from Macs and PCs to iPod touches and iPads. You don't have to have a computer because your iPad can do everything for you. And you know, I kind of get annoyed at this sometimes as well, in that, you know, when you get a new iPhone or a new iPod touch, you have to sync your new device to your Mac or your PC, and that was kind of letting it down, and I know a lot of people were. And what this feature allows you to do is, you know, set your iPad or your iPod touch or your iPhone without the need of connecting up to iTunes. So you go to a shop, you can just configure it there. There's no need to, you know, walk up to an iMac or a MacBook. In essence, making it easier for not only us but Apple as well, wasting less time at the store when you're queuing up for an iPhone for about 7 hours or overnight. The last thing you want to be doing is messing about trying to register and stuff, whereas you can do it right there and then. And similarly, Wi-Fi syncing, and basically as the name suggests, that syncs automatically through Wi-Fi your iPhone to iTunes. So if you leave your machine on overnight, or you've got your iPad or your iOS device beside your Mac and you're not using a Mac, or whatever it may be, it'll sync it automatically, so you're not having to have endless cables. I mean, my desk, as you can see, is just filled by cables, or right down here you can't see, but there's cables all the way. So anything that kind of eliminates cables, making it easier for me, kind of the end user, totally great. And last but not least, Game Center. I'm not too sure of what to make for it, simply because of the fact that I'm probably the only one who doesn't use Game Center. I don't know, there's something about Game Center that just doesn't click with me. Is it the UI? I don't know, but it just looks like, you know, a 5-year-old created Game Center. You know, I've got Game Center, but I can't remember the last time I've actually logged onto it, and I've had so many friend requests on it. I think I've accepted most of them, or either it's full. It's just been ages since I've logged onto it, so I don't even know if, you know, how many people are waiting for me to accept their request. But I don't use it. To be honest, I don't even remember what they actually mentioned about Game Center as to what new features are added, but I believe you've got some more stats. You can post a profile picture, and I think that is kind of it. I'm not too keen on the whole Game Center thing, and it's nothing that major to me, so I'll gladly just move on. And lastly, and again, this is probably one of the major things for me at least, multitasking gestures. Wow. You know, as I've said in previous videos, you know, the iPad is a big screen, so you want a bit more than from your typical iPhone or your iPod touch. So having, you know, gestures that will enable multitasking, superb. Huge fan of it, and we should have really had this at the iPad launch itself back last year. It would have been great to have it then, or even, you know, late last year. But in essence, it's now coming. I say coming, which kind of puts me on to the next point. In September, iOS 5 is going to be launched in September. I think it's too far away, to be honest. We really should have had it in our hands as of like next week or so. It would have been good to have you know, a solid build of it prior to WWDC, so that it was ready. Because again, coming back onto competition, Android has this. Again, not owning any Android devices, but from the people that I follow on Twitter, the kind of general consensus seems to be, you know, this is already on Android, so why are we still behind? Yes, it's fantastic it's been revealed at WWDC, and it's fantastic to see we'll get it, but to launch it in September, can't do much, but hey, sad face all round. So the third major thing which Apple announced at WWDC was iCloud, and from the kind of gist of WWDC, i.e. Line plus iOS 5 plus cloud equals WWDC, iCloud is quite neat, and I must tell you, I'm a huge fan of it, fanboy. And what I mean by that is, you know, I've had a lot of instances where I've got stuff on my iPhone, and when I'm switching back and forth between my iPad and my iPhone and my mum's iPod touch, Some apps aren't there, some photos aren't there, obviously because I haven't synced them all up to the Mac all the time. They're not always synced. So in essence, what iCloud does is, when you've got something on your iPhone, it'll store all the apps, all the books, all your documents, even your backups in the cloud, and it'll push it out to all the other devices that you have, which is a no-brainer, sweet thing, so you're not having to constantly juggle between, you know, getting your iPad to hooking up to the iMac and then, you know, doing it that way. iCloud will update your iOS device on a daily basis, but what it's not going to do is update it from scratch. It's only going to update what the changes that have been made. In essence, it's not going to be using your Wi-Fi bandwidth a lot, so it's only going to make the changes from, you know, the previous change that it made. So if you've not installed an app, haven't done anything, it's probably not even going to do anything if you've not done anything. But if you've installed an app overnight, that is the only changed for the iOS backup that it's going to put up to the cloud. So lastly, coming on to one more thing. This was disappointing. This is something that should have been a part of the iCloud keynote speech, not something, a one more thing. Steve Jobs said it and I was like, hold on, this could be the moment where we're going to see hardware, whether it be an iPhone, whether it be a MacBook Air or a MacBook, whatever, new time capsule, Airport Extreme. I was like, you know, holding on to something, and then when he says iTunes, I was like, no. So basically what I think here is Apple's introduced iTunes Match, and what this allows you to do is, this is how it works. You've got your iTunes library on your Mac or your PC. All your songs in that library are going to go into the cloud, and in essence then you can push them into your iDevices, so your iPad, your iPod Touch, your iPhone, for just a fee of $25 per year. And you can put up as many tracks as you want, and it works quite nicely. And here's a quite cool thing about it. So it doesn't matter whether your iTunes library consists of pirated music, uTorrent music, or Pirate Bay, or legally downloaded music. It doesn't matter. As long as, you know, the iTunes server has that name of that track or that artist, that is going to get pushed onto your iOS device. And it's quite cool because a couple of CEOs have said, this is how Apple or Steve Jobs is planning to charge or monetize the whole game of piracy. Of course, the record labels have been trying for years to try and combat music piracy, and it hasn't really worked. And I think this is going to work simply because of the price. $25 isn't much per annum. It's quite good, and you know, pushing up everything into the cloud and onto your various iDevices. Very neat feature, but did it, you know, require a dedicated one more thing? No. And lastly, the disappointing things we were expecting never happened. MacBook Airs didn't get released or silent updated, and the MacBooks, no word in the back to school promotion, no Airport Extremes or time capsules, as in they're coming up to the run up to WWDC, they were saying there were stock shortages, nothing of that sort. There was no kind of, I was expecting, when they were talking about iCloud, I thought they could possibly put some hardware in to assist with that, Airport Extreme or time capsule, and that's what I thought the one more thing would be, but you know, little did I know it was going to be iTunes Match. And for those of you saying, well, WWDC is a software orientated event, not really. In the past they've introduced new iPhones on this day, so there's no reason to say this is just a software based event. It's not. But here's the thing, because we haven't seen these updates to the MacBooks, the Mac Minis and so on this day or at WWDC on Monday, that does not mean we're not going to see silent updates to the Mac lineup this week or very, very soon. And I say that because, you know, the back to school promotion is going to start. You know, that is definitely going to start very soon, if not in the next few days. And they can't, you know, continue to sell a year-old machine. I'm talking about the white polycarbonate MacBook. It's not going to happen. And for those of you saying, well, they're going to have to get rid of the stock, and that's why the back-to-school promotion comes on, so they can get rid of the current stock. That is partially true, but for a machine which was still available in the last year back-to-school Mac program, the same machine's not going to show up. Surely it's going to get a refresh. The MacBook Airs, okay, I can say possibly, okay, it's not going to get a refresh at the back-to-school promo, but the white polycarbonate MacBooks and the Mac Minis, they need to get refreshed in the next few days or weeks, or just in time for the back to school promo. So guys, that's it for this video really. I thought I would make a kind of a post video on WWDC, my thoughts on it, what, you know, how I feel, what features I like. I hope you guys liked the video. If you can comment, rate, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the video if you can. You know, not a problem if you don't. Let me know in the comments as to what you think about WWDC. You know, what do you think it's worth it? Do you think it was a good event? Are you excited about these new features, or are you not? Could you give two damns about it? But guys, that's it for this video, and I shall see you guys in another life. Cheers.